This is Slough train station. If you go to platform 5 at Slough station, you can find a very unusual passenger. A passenger who has been there for a very long time, over 100 years in fact, but never catches a train. He can legitimately be described now as part of the furniture. This is the story of one of Britain's railway dogs. This is the story of Station Jim. Station Jim, otherwise known as Dog Jim, was just a puppy and in poor health when he was brought to Slough train station, but quickly became something of a mascot for the staff and passengers once he was back on his feet. When he was big enough, he was given the job of collecting for the Great Western Railways Widows and Orphans Fund and had a box placed on his harness. Every time he had a donation, he would bark his thanks, and he even had a reputation for growling at people who left litter and extinguishing discarded cigarettes and matches by jumping on them. He had to be taught not to run across the tracks, but rather to use the footbridge that linked the platforms, like everybody else did, if he wanted to explore the station. Despite living in a train station, he wasn't a big fan of train travel and only undertook a handful of short journeys during his lifetime, the longest being a trip to Leamington Spa, but when the staff discovered he didn't have a ticket, he was sent straight back home. Due to his poor health, he was only collecting for charity for a couple of years, and sadly, he died unexpectedly on the 19th of November 1896 whilst on one of the platforms. His body was stuffed by a local taxidermist and placed on display inside this glass cabinet on platform 5, where he has been ever since. The case has a sign that tells his life story, and in keeping with his main job at the station, there is also a slot to donate your spare change to charity. There was a film made by the BBC in 2001 called Station Jim, and whilst there are some similarities between the true story of Station Jim and the film's plot, the two are not actually connected. Station Jim was not the only dog to become linked to a railway station, and also not the only one to be stuffed and placed on display after his death, although he is the only one to be still in position, and is probably the only one to have his own Twitter account. Dogs collecting for charity were actually commonplace at railway stations around Britain during the Victorian era. If you go to the Bluebell Railway Museum, you can see London Jack, a black retriever, stuffed and on display, who used to roam around the platforms at Waterloo Station. You could also find Brighton Bob, Chelmsford Brenda and Wimbledon Nell, amongst others, at their respective train stations, mingling amongst the commuters, barking and performing tricks in exchange for a donation into the boxes on their harnesses. They became something of a minor celebrity amongst passengers and could collect many thousands of pounds during their careers. Unfortunately, once the criminal classes realised that these dogs could sometimes be carrying large sums of cash on them, it was inevitable that one would eventually be mugged. An Irish Terrier called Tim, working at Paddington Station, was attacked by a gang who tried to break into his collection box. Tim wasn't happy about this and responded by biting them until he was released, but couldn't retrieve his charity box, and the thieves got away with his collection. Stuffing and displaying the dogs in glass cases was very popular for a time, but after the railways were nationalised in 1948, corporate British Rail didn't like the idea of dead dogs on their platforms and removed most of the cabinets. Station Jim is the last of his kind. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe and check out the other videos on the Offbeat London channel.